Awesome. So our guests are rolling in. Start in just a minute. Let's give everybody a chance to be California on time. So I got some people trickling in, but I'll go ahead and get started just by, first of all, saying thank you to, we have tonight with us Kat Olmstead from Waymakers, who we as Newport-Mesa have been in a partnership with Waymakers for the past few years, but Waymakers has a prominent standing in our community for, I believe it's over 50 years, or it was your 50th anniversary. And it's a nonprofit health and human services organization in Orange County, with Project PATH, which is Positive Action Towards Health, has a long history of collaborating with us. They've been working with the district, like I said, for the past few years, implementing several alcohol and other drug prevention strategies to reduce youth substance abuse or substance use. And we partnered with them last year too in our mental health awareness month celebration. And but along with that, they also implement evidence-based drug and alcohol prevention, multi-session curriculum for middle school and high school students, and coordinating youth-led activities to raise awareness of the dangers of youth substance abuse. So through our partnership with them, they have invited a wonderful guest, Angela, who I'll let Kat just give a little warm welcome to, but thank you to everybody who's here with us tonight. And without further ado, I'll stop talking.
Hi, everybody. Happy Wednesday night. It is Wednesday. I just wanted to thank everybody for coming to our parent education night. This is, as Kristen mentioned, this is partnered with Newport-Mesa and Waymakers, and we are a health and human services nonprofit. And we're super excited to be able to talk to you all about how to talk to your kids about drugs and alcohol, and maybe how to navigate these difficult conversations. I'm really excited that Angela is going to be presenting tonight. She is a great speaker, and I think you will all learn a lot. And so now I'm going to pass it over to her as she takes a drink of water, the best timing. And thank you all for coming.
Well, and I also want to echo that, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. This is literally my passion. I absolutely love to talk to parents and parenting adults about something that is so important to us. And part of that is how to have those tough conversations. Part of that is also what are those things that you can set up as a parent and a parenting adult to make sure that you're putting everything in place that you can. So my name is Angela DeRay. I have been in prevention work. This is my 25th year in prevention work. And I think I'm going to say that every day of my 25 years because it has been so much fun doing this work. This presentation is actually sponsored by the Community Prevention Initiative. And let me just share my screen just for fun. I was joking with Marcella, who's doing interpretation for us, that I have 700 slides to get through in 45 minutes. And so we'll see if she still likes me at the end of this. Katarina, give me a thumbs up if you can just see my slide and not that. Yep, good. All right, perfect. So we're going to talk tonight, and let's just jump right in. We're going to talk tonight about how to talk to your kids about alcohol and other drugs. But I would be remiss if I didn't point out that regardless of what conversation you're having with your kiddos, and whether they're 7 or 17, that all of these conversations that they have, as I know you know, is all based in having really good communication with them. So it almost doesn't matter what conversation we're having with them, but what we really want to base it in is what we call the three biggies: bonding, boundaries, and monitoring. And so throughout our agenda tonight, we're going to start off talking about how you have important conversations and do these things for every age. So it doesn't almost matter. It really is based on how you've set that up. The second thing is our kids get to a point where they are at an age or in situations where it's just very natural to take risks. And there are some things that we can do as parents and parenting adults that will help us to set that up. Incidentally, in case you're curious, I have raised 8 kids. We're actually on our last one. I'm a parent and a step parent. I always say that I actually learned more about parenting as a step parent because you have to work so much harder than I ever did parenting my natural children. And so I think that that's very true for foster kids, grandkids, step kids, all of those relationships that just take a little bit more in terms of making sure that you're kind of crossing your T's and dotting your I's. And so real shout out to parents that are parenting adults to foster kids and step kids, also really challenging. But they do get to an age where they, and or in situations where it's a real time of risk for them. And so I'm going to give you some tips and some tools so that you can navigate those a little bit better. The third thing that we're going to talk about is how to prioritize bonding over anything else and why that's so important, especially going into and through teen years. The other piece is that we sometimes are unclear about what a boundary looks like. Certainly you have boundaries and you know what they are, but when it comes to things like drugs and alcohol, even school expectations, all of the things that we really want our kids to do well in and to make good choices about, there are some things that we can do specifically to set healthy boundaries, and we'll talk about that and how you monitor to make sure that they're following those. Finally, I'm going to leave some time at the end to have a good conversation about what do you do if you suspect they're using. Now we're going to scratch the surface, and I'm going to give you some advice and some ideas and some thoughts about that. And then we're going to make sure that you know to go if you really do suspect that they're using in those things, and it goes further than what we're discussing here. Then we'll give you some ideas on how to make sure that they get the help and you get the help that you need. So let's start with a poll. Now we're not 100% sure it's going to work. What? It's working. Okay, well, this is very exciting. So go ahead and mark that poll. We're just curious what made you decide to attend tonight. You can mark as many as you like. You want to get ahead of any future problems. You want to learn more about what to do. You want to learn conversational skills to use with them on a variety of topics, or you have concerns about behaviors right now. Go ahead and vote on that. We'll give you a minute to do it. All right. Okay. And so our poll, this is what, oh, look, so it looks like many people want to get ahead of future problems, want to learn more about what to do. Almost all of you said, or 81% of you said you want to learn conversational skills, which is great because we're really going to focus on that. And then a few of you said that you have concerns about behaviors right now, and we will also talk about that. All right, good job. Thanks everyone for doing that. So I will tell you that early on in my career, I spent a lot of time in prevention helping teens understand how to navigate tough situations. Now, that was 25 years ago, and probably for about 10 years, that was all the work that I did. We worked with the schools, we worked in the community with community centers, and that's really important work. As Kristen mentioned earlier, that's some of the work that Waymakers does, and it's very important. But what we didn't do at that time, because we didn't know as much as we do now, is that the most effective type of prevention, that deep work that you do when you're doing prevention work, is in the family. It's with parents, it's with grandparents, it's with other people that love and care about kids. And so I'm going to offer you some tips for parenting for prevention. And the idea here, we use the term prevention really because we're thinking about how do you prevent your kids from engaging in risky behaviors. But truthfully, you could actually say, how do I increase the likelihood that my kids are going to make healthy choices, or my kids are going to make choices that will move them further into their healthy adult lives? So we know, nobody's surprised to hear this, that there's a lot going on in the teen brain. One of the things that we don't talk about very often, and it's not really something that we think to talk about, is that your brain, as when you're born, when you're very young, in those first few years, your brain is making all kinds of neuronal connections. You're learning, you're growing, language is becoming something that you're using, you're identifying things. And so your brain is incredibly active during that time. Well, what happens in your teen years and your early teen years is your brain begins this sort of pruning process. And that pruning process, it's very well designed. It's designed so that your brain can put more power into some of the skills that it'll need, some of the things that you've already taught them, some of the things they've already learned or their interests. But what it does is it pulls off some of those neuronal connections in order to put them into a much stronger path for what they need. And so partly because of that process, a teen brain is in a very vulnerable position. So introducing substances during that time, and by the way, although this is not something we're focusing on, we're also talking about anything else that interrupts that process. Or it could even be things like excessive video game use, or it could be pornography, a lot of things that might interrupt that teen brain. And so it's a really important time for us to help them to make healthy choices during this time so that their brain makes those really strong connections. And the thing is that we now know, although probably our grandparents and great grandparents before them also knew this, is that the most effective place to do that work is in the family. That's the deep work. So let's just take a peek at when we're talking about brain chemistry and behavior response. Now, here's a really interesting thing. So you're a parenting adult, and you want to make sure that your kids actually respond in the way that you want them to. Well, did you know that your brain actually comes pre-hardwired to produce pleasure neurochemicals that make you feel good when you do the right thing? So what is interesting about that is if they're engaging in pro-social behaviors, those behaviors that please you as parenting adults, please society, their brain will actually release neurochemicals. Well, then they get kind of a good feeling for doing it. Well, one of the things that we can do as parenting adults is, and it's so simple, is point out every time we see them do something that we like that they did. So I'll just give you an easy example. Let's say you've got a couple of kiddos at home and they fight all the time, right? Well, if you point out when they're not fighting and tell them why you think that it's great that they're not fighting or they're getting along, then you're more likely to get more of that good behavior, what you would want them to do. And that really is just about you thinking about how to use their brain chemistry process to help them to make really good and healthy decisions. And then for you and I, and true for them as well, that the more that we repeatedly think about doing it or actually intentionally repeat that action, you can see on the screen, this is actually a pretty decent drawing of how our brain chemistry works, that it actually, the more we repeat that action, we actually get that neuron to send more and more of that chemical each time, strengthening the likelihood that they're actually going to do that behavior. It's why when they were little and you were teaching them to brush their teeth and you consistently reminded them to brush their teeth, but then you saw them do it on their own and you said, great job brushing your teeth. And they were like, yes, I can do that. It's why in their teen years that you're hopefully not still chasing them to brush their teeth, because they felt good about the way that you gave them attention every time. And so it's really great to be able to use their brain chemistry in order to help you get them on the right path. All right, I see that we have a question. I'm gonna hold on to it for a moment. Let me hold on questions until we get closer to the end, and then I'm absolutely happy to answer them. I might answer them as we're going too, so. All right. Look at this one. I just wanted to point out this one. I love this. Dr. Jay Good from the National Institutes of Mental Health. He says teens through their choices and actions have the power to direct the development of their own brains. The reason I think that that is a really powerful statement is because we can actually teach them what we know about the way the brain works. So for example, if they have some bad habits that they don't even want to do, we could actually teach them how to change those neuronal connections. And really it's just repetition with the behavior that they want to do. So that's also one of the things that it really is helpful to teach our teens, that they can also change, and that some of the things that they do, they won't always do. They can change those things. By the way, just shout out to some of the information that we have in this presentation comes from Dr. Carol Comfer, who developed the Strengthening Families program. We've been facilitating it for years, but a lot of material comes from that program because it's got so much information. So I just really wanted to shout out to them here. And of course, there you go. You can see that again. They have the power to direct the development of their own brains. Here's the thing, brain health is really crucial to their behavior because one of the things that we forget, first of all, overall brain health is important. I love Dr. Amen and from Amen Clinics. He's based here in California. And one of the things I love about him is he talks about brain health with respect to, you have to take care of your brain in order to get good things from it. And so of course he talks about things, because he is a doctor, he talks about things like wearing helmets, blah, blah, blah. But he also talks about, and this is something that we can think about even as parents and parenting adults, is when they have behaviors that are not consistent with what we would want, then we can help them to figure out that sometimes it is really just about caring for your brain in the moment. One of the things as the parent of a teenager or a preteen that can be very challenging is when our kiddos are grouchy, angry, they'll yell, all of those kind of like those behaviors that we want to get our back up, like, why are you yelling at me? And one of the very first questions that we can ask us and them is, have they slept enough? Have they eaten enough? I mean, the absolute basics on making sure that they're gonna get those needs met are really important. And yet, both because of society, the way that it's set up, some of the distractions they have, some of the pressures they have, some of the activities that they're in, sleep and healthy eating or eating that will support the brain are sometimes the things that push to the back burner. And yet they're really the very first building blocks that if we can make sure that those things are in place, then we'll just see less of that behavior. So brain health is incredibly important. And the more they practice physical healthy behaviors, for their physical body and support their brain, the more we'll even see better behavior. So let me move to this. So, okay, so now we figure out, all right, so there are real challenges with drugs and alcohol in teen years. And you and I both know that a lot of that is because of their age. But I really wanted to give you a few facts, things that we don't always talk about, and things that you might not realize. So the first thing is that most youth don't use. And that's a really important fact. It's important for you and I to hear that as people who love and care about and parent kids. But it also is important for them to hear, because the more they know what is normal, what is the social norm in their community, the less likely they are to do the opposite of that social norm. So it's important for us all to know that most youth don't use. The next important thing is that alcohol, marijuana, and vape nicotine are the most commonly used substances in adolescence. Now, you can see at the bottom of the slide, fentanyl is a game changer. Pills are when they've gotten deadly. I mean, with fentanyl, there isn't even a time for an addiction to take hold, because fentanyl is deadly, and because it can be added to pills that kids can take, it can be deadly right away. And I know you and I have seen many cases in California and really across the nation, which really and I am not an alarmist. I've been doing this work for many, many years. And the most important thing has always been to help parents set up bonding, boundaries, and monitoring. But it is also equally important now, when fentanyl is on the scene, to let our kids know what it is and give them some skills to avoid it. But those are the most commonly used substances. Addiction is a childhood disease. Let me tell you something about addiction being a childhood disease. Here's the interesting thing about this. When we look at addiction in an adult, it is almost exclusively has almost exclusively begun in childhood. Meaning, if we could get our kids to age 21 without any significant use, binge drinking, trying different drugs and alcohol, if we can get them to that age 21, we actually wouldn't even, there's so few cases of addiction that we wouldn't even consider it a public health problem, because addiction is almost exclusively something that happens in childhood. So what that means is, between the way that their brain is set up and the fact that it is naturally a time where they're sort of pulling away from family, moving towards friends, they're also experiencing a lot of stress that maybe they haven't experienced in the past. And so because of all of that, it is something that almost exclusively begins in childhood. In childhood, meaning 18 and under, in childhood, that is when we have the most influence. And so that's really important. And I won't say anything about this. Marijuana has drastically changed, except to say marijuana has drastically changed. And so if you're still picturing marijuana the way it was back in the 60s and 70s, that is not what is being used today. It is much, much more potent than it ever was. And so it is considered a dangerous drug for kids. The good news, folks, is that strong families actually avoid many of the problems. Now, when you're thinking about adverse outcomes, things like substance abuse, school failure, teen pregnancy, aggression, delinquency, really all of these things can be impacted at home. And so the more we can create a thriving home environment, the better we are at avoiding negative outcomes. Obviously, none of us is going to be immune to problems always, but the more we can do that, the more we can create that environment, the less likely we are to see some of those problems. And most of the things you are already doing right now are the things that are going to work in this situation. So let me show you what that looks like. So the goal here is to parent towards prevention. Now, I already mentioned that there are some overarching parenting skills. If you walk out of here with nothing else, walk out with bonding, boundaries, and monitoring. Those three are key to being able to have those overarching skills that are going to get them all the way through to their adult life in a way that will be not only supportive, but will reduce the risk of them engaging in those behaviors that we don't want our kids engaging in. So let me look at all three of those really quickly and give you some practical ideas on how to do each one. So the first one is bonding. So you're saying, Angela, it's my kid. Obviously, I'm bonded. Well, that is true. You are bonded to them. And I will say this, and I would love it if you would put these answers in the chat box, because I think it would be fun for everyone to see this. When you were a kid or with your kids, what were some of the activities or are some of the activities that you do with them to create warm, loving feelings? So go ahead and put those in the chat box. What are some of the things that you do with your kids, or your parents did with you, or your caregivers did with you to create warm, loving feelings? And I'd love to see that box populated, because it might give us all some good ideas. And here's the thing. Research tells us that it's necessary to bond with them before giving negative consequences. So for example, if you looked at my relationship, I told you 8 kids, kids and stepkids. There were varying degrees of bonding at varying degrees of their varying times in their lives. So there were times that I was very close to some of the kids and at certain ages. And then they changed. I remember the day my daughter turned 13. It was right around that time where she went from being very, very close to me to being 100% going in the other direction. And so there are definitely things. So how do you parent someone then who is yelling at you, screaming at you, refusing to do some of the things that you need done? So the very first thing is to purposefully do some of those activities. And maybe they might be a little different than they were when they were little, but to purposefully do some things to bond with them during that time. So let me show you what that might look like, especially with a teen or a tween. So, and with all ages, you can do my time. And let me just take a peek in this chat box. What? Oh, you guys, so good. Watch movies, show them new and exciting things, encouraging them to try new things with support. Oh, that's fantastic. Read together, play games together, watch movies together. So good, you guys. Reunions, talking to them, dinner, going out to see movies. That's awesome. I love that you guys are doing family dinner. That's so good. Chatting with the TV off, story time, camping. Claudia, I have to come. That's so much fun. Hugging, eating together, talking. Yes, yes, very cool. All right. So the first skill that I want to just talk to you quickly about is my time. Now, my time is a really great skill that will help you to do a quick bond with your kids. Then I'm going to show you how to look for and complement the good. Again, you're already doing this. I'm just calling it something. I'm just giving it a name. And then the third thing is to have pleasant family meals. So here, let's do my time first. My time is a little bit different than you might think. My time is an opportunity for them to play with you. Now, if you have a 15-year-old, there are definitely things that you can do to get your 15-year-old to play with you. Put it in the chat box. If you're a 15-year-old, you had a 15-year-old and they wanted, and you told them, we have to do this one-on-one time every day. I think it's going to make me a better parent. It's going to make me connect more with you. And you asked them to choose some things to do with you. And you said, you have to do it. Put in the chat box. What are some things they might say? Go ahead and put that in the chat box. While you're doing that, I'll say, go out and shoot hoops with them. You could even, if you were not a gamer, you could even play a video game with them, let them teach you a video game. Lots of different things. Put those in the box. So the rules are, it has to be fun. Now, it's going to be weird, and that's okay, because that's life. I mean, you're going to try something new. Might feel weird. That's totally okay. Oh, look, surfing. Yes. Playing a video game together, listening to a podcast together. Yes, these are some of the things they'll choose. Absolutely. Oh, Lori, watch anime and talk about the show, what happened and why. Yes. So the rules for you: cheerfully give your attention, notice the good they do and make comments. Couple of don'ts, you can see that. Don't begrudge the time together, make it happen. They deserve our time, and we're only talking about 10 or 15 minutes a day. And then at that time, don't correct, direct, or criticize them. So back to my example of basketball, if you decide to play basketball with them and they chose that, let's say you're a great basketball player and you see that they're shooting that hoop and it's a little bit off. And you know that if you just give them this like one little tip that it would make their shot better, don't. Just wait. Don't give them any feedback until after my time. My time is just a time to connect. And definitely offer those things later. All right. So look at that last one. This is so us as parents, isn't it? Don't try and teach a lesson or push our point of view during that time. It should 100% just be about playing. Your 7-year-olds are going to love this. Your 17-year-olds are going to be like, why are you doing this? But I promise you, it will pay dividends if you do it. Even try it a few days a week. The next one in that category is to look for and compliment the good daily. I mentioned that if you compliment them on something that you see them do well, you're going to get more of that behavior. But did you know that if you ignore some minor annoying behavior, but praise the opposite of it, that you're actually going to get more of that better behavior? So for example, if you have a kid that whines a lot, if they whine, but then one time they walk in and they ask you for something without whining, you would say, that is great. Thank you so much for asking me with such a kind voice. I love it when you ask me that way. And then if you can say yes, say yes. And then you're going to get more of that behavior. You get to decide. You're a family. You get to decide what's important to you in terms of behavior. So if you don't mind whining, then that's a great one to ignore. If you can't stand whining and you can't ignore it, you're a family. You decide what's important to you. And then, of course, I mentioned how excited I was that you were all doing dinner time together. Dinner time does not need to be fancy. This is really interesting. In a study of 3,000 volunteers who were wearing pagers worldwide, they were asked to record what they were doing and their level of happiness each time the pager buzzed. The recorded levels of happiness, when they were the highest, people were sitting together eating with people that they loved and cared about. And so that is a place for us to be able to bond. And that is really essential because it reminds them of who they are. It could be Kentucky Fried Chicken in a park on a bench. It does not need to be a big fancy dinner with china. It could be, we used to throw when the kids were younger, we'd throw a blanket on the floor in the middle of the living room, and we would have literally like peanut butter and jelly picnic where we would just eat whatever and we'd sit on the floor. That is the bonding piece. It doesn't need to take forever, but the more you do it, the less likely they are to engage in risky behaviors. And that is based on research. So look at this, here's my research note. Research shows that children who have dinner with their families at least 3 to 5 times a week are 33% less likely to use alcohol and drugs. So that's a good one and something that we can all do. And then, of course, here's a really nice bonding checklist for you. These are a few things to think about. Do you tell them you love them? Make a point to look for and compliment the good, spending that one-on-one time, eating dinner together. And then the other really nice one is holding a weekly family meeting, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that, where you just sit down as a family and talk about what's coming up in our schedules, what makes us a great family, and end with something pleasant. And a few more, spending time laughing. Laughing is so important to families, you know that. And then talking to them about their dreams and goals. Start young. Ask them directly, are you happy? Ask them how you can support them. And then those customs and traditions that either you have or you want to have, prioritize them as a family. It is partly what connects them to us. That doesn't mean that you have to always have the traditions that maybe you had, maybe you didn't like some of those traditions. Make up your own. But whatever those are, those customs and traditions are incredibly important to our kids. Put in the chat box, what are some of the customs and traditions that you had as a kid, or that you did with your kids or do with your kids? I'd love for us to give each other some ideas. And then of course you can see the last one, we try and go to school activities, games, performances, etc. as the family. While you're typing what kind of traditions you have as a family, I want to talk about this next one. So boundaries are super important. And here's the thing is research actually tells us that kids want and need clear rules. Now, we think our kids know what are the rules are in our home. We certainly say them enough. We feel like they know them. But do you know that when we ask kids what the rules are in their home, they almost always cannot tell us. They can't articulate what they are. If we ask them, by the way, about the boundaries about things like drugs and alcohol, less than 20% of American kids say that their parents ever talked to them about drugs and alcohol or the other biggies, sex or any of those things. Less than 20%. But we ask those same parents and they 50% say they absolutely did. So there's a disconnect there. So there have to be some real skills to be able to set those boundaries. So these are a few ideas for you to think about. Oh, I love this, you guys. Barbecues, bowling, family get-togethers. Yes, awesome. And it could even be, I saw somebody say earlier, reading books together, reading Green Eggs and Ham. So those are also some traditions. So here are some skills to set some boundaries. And some of those skills are actually making family rules and articulating them. But not only just the rules, but also the consequences. And you can just discuss it as a family. So for example, let's say you have an older kid, maybe you have a 15-year-old and you say, I don't want you at a party where there's drinking. And if you're at a party where there's drinking, you have to call me so I can take you home. And then you have to say what the consequence would be. And then you sit as a family and discuss what that consequence would be. And then, of course, you can see setting up and using a system to reward good behavior. I mentioned the more we reward good behavior, the less we're going to see the bad behavior associated with it. They don't like to hear this, but actually having chores connects kids to their families. It makes them feel like they're an important part, and they are an important part of our kids growing up. So it's not just that we want them to know how to do things. They have to have chores in order to be a connected member of our family. So assign them responsibilities. And there are tons of lists that you could even Google lists of what could be a chore for a 5-year-old or what could be a chore for a 10-year-old or what should my 13-year-old be able to do. But that's really helpful. Oh, I love this. Visit grandparents every Saturday and bring flowers to grandma. Very nice. And then, of course, positive routines. And then I love this 7 steps of positive discipline. I'm going to show you that in just a moment. But when you're thinking about those rules in your home, you just ask yourself, what would create peace and love? What would create an orderly, well-managed? And you do this together. You sit down as a family and say, I saw this presentation and she said most kids can't articulate the rules. So let's just talk about what those rules might be and have that conversation with them and let them be a part of creating those rules so that they really do feel like they are a valued member whose voice is heard. Now, listen, that does not mean that they can say, oh, bedtime's midnight. And since we're all chatting it out, then bedtime is now midnight. No, it means that you're discussing it, but you always have the final word. And you, in that discussion, you're more likely to get them to follow the rules. Then, of course, responsibilities. Responsibilities are really important. I mentioned that they have to have chores. The more, not the more chores, but the more they feel like their chores matter, that the responsibilities matter, the more likely they are to connect with us. And by the way, if you give them an allowance or don't give them an allowance, none of those things matter. The most important thing in their contributing to the family is that when they are contributing, you're giving them as many social rewards as you can. And a social reward is a hug, a smile, you saying, good job, I'm so proud of you. So the more social rewards they get, the better. They would rather just have a new pair of sneakers. But actually, research tells us that the most important thing things are social rewards. And here, of course, you can see is a nice little checklist on some of the things that you do to make sure this, if I were saying, if we have a family that really did well in setting boundaries, these are some of the things that you would do. And then the final one in this category is monitoring. And this monitoring really is twofold. This is making sure they're in a good social environment, a healthy social environment, but then also checking in. So it's, are you in a safe place? Are you with people that would not ask you to engage in risky behaviors? Which, by the way, one of the things that we know from research in the last few years in particular is one of the most important people in determining whether or not your kids are going to engage in risky behaviors are the parents of their closest friends. And part of that is they may not have some of the same ideas that you do about making sure that the kids are not drinking at their house, or they might, you want to make sure they're not covering for the kids. Oh yeah, you can say that you're here when you're not here. And so knowing who their friends' parents are is really critical, in particular in their preteen and teen years. And that can feel a little awkward if you don't know who they are, but this is a really good time to start thinking about how to get to know them a little bit better. And so here you can see a few skills. One is to teach them about how it harms their brain, to talk, they hear you. I'll talk about that in a moment. To teach them to choose their friends wisely, and then for you to share your values with them. And so maybe you haven't even articulated your values yourself, right? Like maybe you haven't even thought about that, but to be able to take some time to think about, what are your values? Do you value education? Do you value taking care of the environment? Do you value family time? And then being able to sit as a family, maybe even do an activity where you sit down and make like a family shield that has our family values. That's a great way to begin that conversation. These come from the Talk They Hear You campaign, which is a great campaign, which essentially just says, parents, you do not understand how important you are to this discussion. These are 5 goals that you can have in making sure that you've had those conversations with your kiddos. And this, again, you could start at 7, having those conversations, because they do go over other people's houses, conversations about not ever taking anyone's medication, all the way up to we disapprove of you drinking alcohol underage, and these are the things that, or whatever it is, and this is what will happen if you do. These are the consequences. And then, of course, the 3 skills: ask them. Ask questions before they go out, and then verify the information, set and enforce curfews, and then meet their parents, meet their friends' parents. And of course, there are your 5 questions that you should ask or could ask every time they go out. Where are you going? Who are you going with? What will you be doing? When will you return? And your kids can never say you never talked to them about drugs and alcohol if you ask them every time, will there be alcohol there, or will there be? And so it is always going to open up this conversation. And here's that checklist. So we know where they're going to go. We know their parent, their friend's parents. We see that they stay in an alcohol and drug-free social environment. We make sure they don't have access to those things. In particular, at our home, when we ask kids where you get that, they usually say at home. So if you have pills at home, lock them up. Alcohol, make sure that you monitor it, put it away so that they're not getting it. And then, of course, we promote fun, positive, alternative activities. I don't know if you noticed, but I mentioned a couple of times, ask them how they're doing. Ask them how they're, give them an opportunity to tell you how they're doing. I want to mention this one more time, that family traditions and happy family rituals, we have got to have fun with our kids. Our teenagers don't want to have fun with us. And you know what? We still need to have fun with them. So we have to be able to draw them back in by maybe doing things that are a little bit different than we've ever done before, asking them, what is the best way for me to be able to connect with you and do fun things? What would you want that to look like? And then in some ways, putting your foot down and saying, we're going to do something fun as a family this Saturday. And so if we're going to do something fun, I'll let you help decide what it is. You're going to have to block off between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. on Saturday. What should we do as a family? And insisting that our teens continue to connect with us. They don't get to be able just to brush us off for the next 3 or 4 years. First of all, it's not healthy for them. Second of all, it won't connect them to us, which is so important in these years. We need to be flexible. They're not going to do what they always wanted to do, but you know what, or what we always wanted them to do. They want to do new things, but you know what? I do not skateboard. I promise you, I do not skateboard, but I have a skateboarder. And so I watch some skateboard videos, not that many, but I watch him in skateboarding. I'll take him, like we'll go on like a couple of day trip, and I'll take him to like all the skate parks we can find on our trip. Or so you just have got to connect with them in new ways, and more power to you people, because you are the ones that are going to have to reach harder and further than they are. And in the middle of them telling us they don't want to be with us, but I promise you, it will pay dividends. Play, 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 make them play with you. All right. Now, for those of you who suspect they might be using, I'm going to give you some tips on what to do. And again, when we get to this last slide, I'm going to say, if you absolutely are like, Angela, we did these things, this webpage, drugfree.org, is absolutely one of my favorite websites. And let me tell you why. So if you really suspect they're using, you can get all of these next tips on their website, drugfree.org. But let me walk through a few of them so that you can get an idea of what it is. The very first thing is to get on the same page. Again, these are going to be uncomfortable conversations, but the real trick here is making sure that we've met with each other, whether we're a together couple or a divorced couple, or we don't live together or whatever. We've got to get on the same page. We have to make an agreement together on the position that you're going to take. So if you do think that they're using, do your absolute best to get on that same page, make that agreement. If you disagree, try to disagree privately, but have a united front in front of the kids that you think are using, child or children that you think are using. And then really set a pledge to not undermine or talk badly about one another. And here's the thing, I get it. I told you I'm a stepmom. And so we did not always have the healthiest relationships with exes. There comes a point though, where the kids are struggling and we have to fix some things if we can in order to support them. So the best that you can. If you are a couple that is co-parenting and this is an easier conversation, get together and decide what you're going to do together. You got to be prepared to be called a hypocrite. By the way, and I will only say this about that, they're going to ask you whether they're using or not. Have you ever tried drugs? You get to decide how to respond to this. And so as a couple, you sit together and say, how are we going to respond to that? And your response is perfectly legitimate. No matter what your response is, you have to decide not to glamorize whatever it is that you did. So for example, you don't want to say, oh, we had some times, because that message that they're getting is that it's okay, you look fine, so you are healthy and no problems. And so that actually will increase their likelihood. So, but do prepare to be called a hypocrite. And again, you're not going to run out today and have these conversations. You're going to sit, you're going to prepare. If you absolutely believe your kid is using, get on the drugfree.org website. They will actually walk you through. And if you've gone through this, they'll actually help you find some help locally. So you can also find help locally. You're going to want to gather any evidence that you might have. it might be challenging for you to think about like, oh, I don't think I want to snoop in their room or through their belongings. Just remember that especially if you think something's happening, remember that your primary responsibility is to protect their well-being. And so as you're thinking about how did I know? Is there evidence I need to gather? You want to think about how are they going to respond. Do not walk into this conversation cold, having not done your homework. And have a good understanding of it. And so, of course, there are common hiding places that kids will hide things. I will also say this, the earlier you get them help, the better. So if you suspect that they're using and you're just at the beginning, they're just at the beginning of their use, the earlier you get them help, the better. And so some of these things are really important. So obviously they're going to be angry. And if you think this is going to be an uncomfortable conversation for you, imagine how uncomfortable it is going to be for them. So just be prepared. They're going to say things that are designed to shock you. Even in the face of the most convincing evidence, they'll say that it's not theirs. They'll accuse you of not trusting. So just be prepared. And again, that drugfree.org, you can actually walk through. It's such a good website. You can actually walk through, if they say this, I can say this, and it'll give you some common scenarios. And then set some realistic goals. If I know what I want that outcome to be in this conversation, it'll go much more smoothly. I want to keep my expectations low. Even though this is a lot, even though this sounds challenging, if you believe that they are using, you cannot sweep it under the rug. You cannot, because you could catch and change a life-altering situation now that they will be much more entrenched in later. So I know that this is tough, but and we have been in this situation. I know that it is tough, but the more you prepare for this conversation, the more you prep yourself and get ready, the easier it'll be for you. It's very unrealistic for you to be able to sit with them and you present the evidence and they say, yep, you're absolutely right, I'm going to stop tomorrow. That is an unrealistic expectation. You want to have more, even if you could just express to them how important it is that they don't use, then that's a win for that first conversation and leads you to the next piece, which is you've got to establish clear rules and consequences. Think through what those rules might be. What are the limits you'd want to set? How will you monitor what they're doing, where they're going, who they're with? How will you monitor it? Again, get your spouse or your co-parent, your parents, whoever you can, whoever is within their sphere, if you need to. I'm definitely decide. I am not saying post it on social media, but if there are parents or grandparents that are close to you and are supportive and helpful, that would be a good place to help. But it's important to prepare and listen when they talk, especially if this is not something that you're familiar with. Listen when they talk. Listen to what they're saying. It's important whether you're talking about your kids using and they're using, or you're just preparing for those conversations, to know that your children understand that if there's been a family history of addiction, because it puts them at a higher risk. And you want them to understand that. And you could just really explain to them, because of genetics, it makes us more vulnerable as a family. I tell my kids that all the time. We talked about that. We have family in recovery. And so it's really important for them to know that, because it's more of a reason for them to avoid using, but they need to know the risks for them. And then I mentioned this, get help early, get help early, get help early, get help early. Very, very important. So I saw in the chat box that the presentation will be available to you. There are also a ton of resources that are included in the presentation, and you can see right here. But if you are someone who you do believe that your kids are, if you do believe that your kids are using drugfree.org, and let me just stick that in the chat box. Good. All right. So let me, oh, good. You are so good. Look at you. I'm on the website, drugfree.org. Perfect. So that's a great place to go. Let me just spend a few minutes. I only have a few minutes to answer questions. So let me just, I saw that there were some earlier on. Let me go back to those. Does tablet and phone addiction, would that lead to substance abuse later in life? So this is such a good question. Here's the interesting thing. And I won't speak to the science on this because I have not read recent science on this. But I will say that back when I was researching some of this several years back, they were making some correlations. Now, because the operation in your brain works the same if it's, if it's a phone addiction or a tablet addiction as it does with alcohol, it's very similar. If that really is a problem for you, or you really think that might be a problem moving forward, it's something that I would continue to research. I have a nice couple of books that I always look through.
And Angela, there was a request to repeat the question. So the question was, does tablet and phone addiction lead to substance abuse later in life?
Perfect. All right. And then let's see. Oh, what was the question? Let's see. Consequences resource. Not sure how to connect these with the behavior. Oh, so good. Okay, so essentially, when you're thinking about what the consequences are, first of all, let me just tell you a parent secret. You do not have to have all the answers. I know, shocking, our kids think that we do, and yet we don't. And so the very first thing, because this answer could be from any age group, right? So the very first thing that you can do, and this is true for me, even as I was raising my kids, is I would Google what's a good consequence for coming home 10 minutes late, and then get some ideas. But the most effective way of doing it, two things. One, it should not be, we think of like the middle road. Don't get in one side of the ditch or the other side of the ditch. Don't make it so harsh that your kid comes home 10 minutes late and you take their cell phone for a month. And then don't be so lenient that they break the rules and there is no consequence for it. And then finally, I would say, and I'll read the rest of your question, but then finally I would say, throw your consequence at a friend or your partner and say, what do you think about that? Am I too far over or am I not? Okay, so books regarding the topic. Unfortunately, I did not get a book list together. I'm so sorry. What are some suggestions for kids that don't like to share? I have a 9-year-old. Don't like to share what's happening at school. Interesting. So again, going back to that discussion about how to connect with them, my time is one of the most effective things you can do. And if you do have a younger student, like 7, 8, 9, 10, somewhere in there, one of the things that you can do is prioritize my time, let them choose the activity, and then you act like an announcer. So the way it looks is, if you can picture this, when they used to put baseball games over the radio, and so you weren't watching the game, you were listening to it, and then the announcer would say, okay, so and so is up to bat, and he hit the ball, and he run first base, second base. You act like that in your my times. So let them play a game. They don't have to invite you to play, by the way. Let them play a game with you watching and start talking about what they're doing. And so, for example, if they're playing with their horses, this is great for younger kids. They're playing with their horses and one horse hits another horse. You can say, wow, that horse seems angry. And so what you're doing is you're allowing them to use that time to be able to process some of their feelings. And then you'll start to hear about some of the things that are bothering them or upsetting them, even at school. All right.
Angela, I'm so sorry. We have 1 minute left. I feel like we should have booked you for that 6-hour session.
Well,
that you offer.
our time is up and I am done. So that's perfect.
I really appreciate it. If you could too, if you have a list of books, and you want to send like, or just a few, and you want to email it to me, then I can send out an email to everybody who participated tonight. And that was
Yes.
the group. And I know someone is, they're trying to get the slides, and those will also be on the website next week, along with a recording of tonight's amazing presentation. You were outstanding. You're a great presenter, also a lovely way of sharing really difficult information and hard conversations, but that are the reality of us parents. That's never what we plan when they're newborns, but it's certainly in the path for so many of us. So again, I really appreciate your time and your insight, all of the years and hours of time and energy that it took to be such an expert in this really important area of knowledge. So thank you, everyone. There's also additional 4 more events in our Parent Ed series, all in the month of May to honor Mental Health Awareness Month, and our virtual 5K on May 14th, and some other events that are happening that you can find on our website, on the district website. One last thing I did want to say too, and I dropped it in the chat, but Newport-Mesa offers we have a contract with Care Solace. So if you Google NMUSD and Care Solace, that will take you to our specific page that gives you access. It's a care concierge service, which not only links you to mental health service providers, but also specialists in substance use. And so you're able to do an anonymous search to find people that work in the criteria that you provide with your insurance and your location, and it will give you a list. You also can work directly with Care Solace, and they'll help you make appointments and follow up with you to make sure that you remember them and all of those great things. So thank you, Waymakers, and Kat, awesome working with you, and Marcella for your translation, and Angela DeRay again. So nice to meet you, and thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.